Hello, everybody, and welcome back to everything drug and alcohol testing and everything, whether it's abuse, whether it's use, whether it's prevention, anything drug and alcohol is what we're about. And I am your host, Greg Henderson. And today we have an awesome show for you. We're going to be talking about international drug testing. And as you can see, depending on what view of the camera you on, to my left or to your right, or to my right, your left, whichever it is. Yeah. We have Matt Taylor, as you can see in the name below, and he is the managing director of Innovative Testing Solutions. He started his career within customer service and account management and was then fast-tracked into a general management role where he oversaw a number of sites and large headcount. In 2002, Matt co-founded ScreenSafe, which became the UK's leading independent drug and alcohol testing service provider. Following the sale of ScreenSafe in 2012, Matt continued with the industry and then went on to co-found ITS. And it stands for, you can see it on the shirt right there, ITS Test Kits, with Karl Davies. With extensive knowledge and over 20 years of hands-on experience within the drug and alcohol policy training and testing sector, Matt has become a leading specialist in policy, point-of-care testing, and sample collection, including application of those to COVID testing. During the COVID-19 pandemic, in 2021, Matt was appointed to the board of the International Forum of Drug and Alcohol Testing, which is IFDAT, and I call it IFDAT. And and made president in 2022. He is also an active member of the European Workplace Drug Testing Society, EWDTS, and is currently helping to formulate guidelines for point-of-care testing. So welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me.
And congratulations on becoming the president of IFDAT.
Thank you very much. Chairman, president, it's one of those floating titles, yeah.
All those good things. And it's funny because I was supposed to go to a IFDAT conference in Dublin, Ireland, and I think that was 2015, maybe 16.
I think it was, yeah. I think it was. Was it Dublin or was it Belfast?
Dublin. It was Dublin.
That will have actually been 2018 then.
2018. Okay. Yeah, I was supposed to go, but I was with the Department of the Interior at the time, so they were trying to figure out would it be beneficial and what would be the parameter of me going internationally to, a conference, and which was also interesting because at Department of Interior we oversaw Department of State. And so Department of State had a lot of, locations and people needing testing internationally. So it only made sense that we would get into, IFDAT, for information.
You missed the great conference. I was actually speaking at that one. But yeah, we get a huge amount of international attendees. So yeah, it's a fantastic conference. But we'll touch on that.
We'll talk. Yeah, we'll get into that. So tell me about how did you get into drug testing? How did you get into the drug world?
Okay, so wind the clock back 30 years. And I was quite a heavy social recreational drug user. It was during a time within the UK that we call the rave sort of scene, the 90s, sort of ecstasy, amphetamines, that type of sort of social recreational drugs. And I was in my late teens. Everybody was doing it. Everybody I knew was doing it. It was part of the culture, part of the music scene, part of the social scene. And that was it. And I carried on using drugs for a number of years and started my sort of, I suppose, my official career path. I was a holiday rep in Europe, which brings with it lots of the party scene. So although it's forbidden to do these things, it's also encouraged. So it's a bit of an oxymoron, really. And then I started settling down within a career in the UK, and nobody knew about drugs. The culture at the time in the late 90s and early 2000s, the director, the people running businesses, it was an alcohol culture. They would be very much drinking on the job, very much going out at lunchtime, very much consuming alcohol, very against drugs, but they had no idea. They had no education, no training, no knowledge. They only saw what the media threw in, which was, ecstasy, really bad for people, but the drinking culture was fine. I then worked my way up through that business and was put in charge of a number of businesses fairly quickly, and realized that that sort of position wasn't the correct position to be in. We had some issues within some of the places we were working in. I looked at how can we resolve these issues? How can we mitigate the risks? How can we, and at the time it was very much a dark art. There was very sort of specialist companies doing, we can look after your drugs and alcohol testing. We can do this for you. But the amount they were charging was ridiculous. It was up here, and I'm thinking, it can't be that difficult. And then when I'm sat in front of people and they're coming to talk to me, I knew more about it than they did.
Wow.
And so I thought, you know what? There's an opportunity here. So I looked into that opportunity with a business partner, set up the business, took it from strength to strength, built it up, and in 2012 sold to a private equity company, and then carried on working within that business. Then left that business, saw out my non-compete, started a new business. The drug and alcohol testing world is a very small world globally. Networking is essential, and I know a lot of people within the industry. And very quickly it was sort of put out to me, look, when are you starting again? When are you starting again? Because we're not happy with the service we're getting from here. We're not getting so. I started the Innovative Testing Solutions at ITS with my now business partner, and grew the business from there. So I suppose in a nutshell, I went from one side to the other side. But I think personally, I actually think it gives me an advantage.
I was about to say that.
It really helps me. Drug and alcohol use is prevalent. It's prevalent in society. It doesn't matter what age you are. And it helps me to, I suppose, talk to people from different levels of life to understand, and for them to understand that actually, drug and alcohol testing is not about disciplinary matters. It's a tool in the toolbox to try and manage risks, and it's not the only tool in the toolbox either. As you quite well know, Greg, training and education is essential.
Right. So when you were back in that time period, what was your choice of drugs? What was your thing?
Very much the dance scene. So it was what you guys would call Molly, but we call it ecstasy or MDMA or E's, as they were. Very much that sort of scene.
What did that do to you? Like, just kind of giving people a perspective, because it sounds easy to say just a drug. Okay, I'm taking this drug or whatever. But what did that do to you? Like, do you remember? Like, how did that make you feel? Like, what does that drug actually do to you?
So I can only tell you from my perspective.
Right.
And I'll be very honest with you. It felt great, Greg. I had very, very good times. I had a very close bunch of friends We went through a lot together. And the use of social recreational drugs was just part of our lives at the time. You know, people we were going out with, their parents were using drugs. It's weird to look back at it now, and to explain it to my daughter or to explain it to my parent, well, to my mum, because my dad sadly passed, but you know, to explain it to people, it's really difficult, and it's really difficult to explain it to somebody who's never actually taken drugs.
Right.
It's very different to alcohol. I don't actually like the feeling of being drunk, so I get to a certain level when I'm drinking alcohol and I stop, because I don't like being out of control. I don't like, you know, I'm also 6'7", Greg, so if I'm out in a club, I'm the one that everybody looks at as being, you know, the target. So how did it make me feel? It made me feel part of a culture. It made me feel very happy at the time. Don't get me wrong, it had a lot of downsides, but in the moments when you're there and you're with your friends and you're in that culture, it was amazing. You know, and sometimes I look back and I think, you know, maybe just one last time, but no.
How did you end? What was your point to say, you know what, this is enough?
Okay, so I think a lot of people, age has a thing to it, responsibilities. So, you know, you're buying a house, you've got a good job, you're starting a family, all those types of things where you start getting responsibilities and you're going out less and less, and you know, you're not enjoying that sort of single lifestyle and being young, and heaven forbid now, there's just no way I could do it now. I mean, you know, if I have a few drinks on a Friday night, you know, Saturday morning, oof, you know.
So it wasn't an addictive thing. It was more just a fun thing at the.
Well, do you know what, Greg? A lot of people ask me that, and at the time I'd have said no, I wasn't addicted. But yeah, looking back, of course you were. You're addicted mentally and physically. It became a trigger. You know, I'm going to go out to a rave. I'm going to go to a club. I'm not going to have as much of a good time if I don't take an E, whatever it might be. So yeah, it is definitely addictive. The feeling's addictive, but I think you know, I had a lot of friends and people I knew that then went down a different path, which it was definitely a gateway to different things, which I never followed that sort of, you know, that heroin, that crack cocaine, that crystal meth type of, you know, path of what people might refer to as hard drugs. But again, I don't like that phrase. There's no soft and hard drugs. It depends on what triggers you personally. But I grew out of it. I met my beautiful wife. She was a nurse. She was very much against drugs, you know, and we had conversations, and do you know what? I thought, what would I rather do? And then when we got married and we got pregnant, it was an easy decision to make. I was more addicted to cigarettes at the time, but
not much better.
But hey, yeah, I actually think for me personally, it's very easy to give up. So I found giving up drugs, giving up cigarettes, it's very easy for me to do. But that doesn't mean it is for everybody, you know. People struggle to give up cigarettes. So, you know, I think also it's the culture you're in. So if you're still going out with the same friends and you're still going to the same places and you've still got the same peer pressures and you've still got the same scene, it would be very difficult to come out of that because of so many different factors. But the rave scene started dying in the UK And that's mainly, I can give you a bit of story about that, but that's mainly because cocaine started coming into the clubs, and with cocaine came violence and organized crime, and that sadly killed off the rave scene, and just things just generally took a dive. So yeah,
we'll have to dig into the crime side of it at some point later.
Absolutely.
So where are you actually located?
So I'm located in the UK, in a place called Staffordshire, which is about as slap bang in the middle of the UK as you can get. Well, slap bang in the middle of England. So for those of you who don't know, the United Kingdom is Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And we're in England, and if you plotted a map and you went London and Manchester, we're sort of halfway in between. We're about as far from the sea as you could possibly get. So we're not worried about global warming.
Right in the middle. So tell us a little bit about its test kits. What do you guys do?
So Innovative Testing Solutions, or its test kits, we're primarily a point of care testing specialist. What we do is, I suppose the easiest way to describe it to people in the US would be like a TPA, like a third-party administrator. So we specialize in policy writing, procedures, training, education, all the front-end stuff. We're a provider of high-quality point-of-care testing equipment, whether that be oral fluid, urine. We look at a few other things as well. We're just about to launch a brand new product in the UK, which is a drug patch. So you guys have had it in the US for a while. So it's a wearable patch, and it's aimed at abstinence. So you wear the patch, you wear it for 7 to 10 days, then we come and remove it, and then we analyze the patch, and we can tell you if you've been abstinent during that time. We look at rolling out, as I say, training and education, and I see those two things as two very separate things. And, you know, with my background, I'm a very keen provider of education, not propaganda.
Right.
You know, stop using drugs is not going to work. You know, just say no doesn't work. So we have to educate people and give them choice, informed choices, let them understand that, you know, if their choice is to consume drugs at home, but still have it in their system when they come to work, they need to understand what that means for them, and how they can access help, how they can receive help. You know, what does that mean for them? You know, if I get caught with an amount of drugs on me out by the police, I'll get a criminal record for drugs, which means I can't travel to America, I can't travel to Australia. Some people say, I don't want to travel to America or Australia, but, you know, many families do. And you've got to have these informed choices. So ITS, we look after that side of things. We provide collection services through a subcontractor. We provide laboratory services through a subcontractor. So we do what I would call the front end, the customer service, the customer focused end. We look after our clients, provide high quality products and services. We don't look after the laboratory end, which, you know, in the UK need to be UCAS 17025, which is an ISO regulation. And that's us. You know, we're very much an entrepreneurial business, very flexible. We look at innovation, hence the name, Innovative Testing Solutions. So we look at some new stuff that's coming through. We have a lot of projects on the go at the moment, which, you know, we're going to launch new products, which just bring new ideas to the marketplace. You've been in this business for a while.
Yeah.
Innovation has not happened too much, and every now and again there's a few products that come through, or a few services that come through, which are real game changers. And you know, I think right now at the moment it's an excellent time for our industry. There's people are moving. I mean, you look at how the DOT have now started embracing oral fluid,
Right.
you know, and how that's moving forward, which then brings brand new stuff. You know, at the IFDAT conference, we've got some amazing innovation going to be presented through sponsors and speakers, and you know, we've got some guys who are looking at how to demonstrate impairment through, you know, through an app and through software, and you know, through I suppose IT. We've never really looked at impairment. Drug and alcohol testing is about being under the influence. Being able to look at that impairment is really difficult. So yeah, that's what we do as ITS. We serve customers, and me personally, I wear lots of hats, and I help people network throughout the world. You know, we do projects all over.
So with IFDAT, do you guys deal with because you're, like I said, more of a consortium, right? Third party entity or whatever. So I have a two-part thing when you were talking, and then we'll move into IFDAT. Do you actually interact with U.S. clients or customers, and if not, how can that relationship be developed if people I guess let me go back to it. Why would it be important for U.S. employees to interact with someone like It's Test Kits when it comes to testing? How is that important?
Okay. I think the easiest way to demonstrate that would be if we wanted some testing done in the US. Do we have to follow guidelines? Are there different types of testing for different industries? And is it DOT? Is it non-DOT? Is it airlines? Is it this? Is it that? Blah, 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 blah. It's exactly the same when you come to Europe. But more so with the fact that, you know, the UK has different things to parts of Europe. So yes is the answer. We deal with a lot of international clients. We deal with, we look after people from Australia, New Zealand, America. We've just been asked to look at some projects in the Middle East. You know, we have clients who will contact us because they've got employees. So it's an American-owned company. They've got employees based in the UK, and especially now with remote working, you know, people are all over the world. You know, and we will get asked to go and do a test. Now, we might get asked to do a test under the guidelines from the US because they're a US employee. So we need to follow what the requests are. Now, if they're working in the UK and they're following UK guidelines or European guidelines, you know, then we might test them differently. So it's important to interact with somebody like ourselves, and there's plenty of experts. You know, the UK, I would say outside of the US, the UK is probably the most, it has the most concentration of experts. You know, we do the most amount of testing in Europe, I believe. And, you know, we have some world leading experts in the UK. So we get contacted. Can you go and do a test for X? Okay, what drug panel do you want to use? Do you want to use US cutoffs? Do you want to use European cutoffs? You know, so coming to somebody like us, we will know the difference. You were talking before, so if that's one of the things I'm involved in, EWDTS, I'm involved in as well, but not on the board, or I'm just an active member. A good friend of mine is the president of EWDTS, Jose. We met in Istanbul in, I think it was October time last year. EWDTS is the European Workplace Drug Testing Society, and as a society, we write guidelines, or they write guidelines about best practice, but also about cutoffs, and essentially they're they're not mandated, but they're guidelines. So it's not like they're legislative, but it gives people best practice. Those guidelines are free. You can get them on the EWDTS website. So if I was an American-based business and I was wanting to do some testing in Europe, you can go on the EWDTS website. You can download the guidelines for oral fluid, for urine, for hair testing. I think they're coming out with some for breath testing as well, which is another one of the innovations that we'll be showcasing at IFDAT, is drug testing in breath, which is moving on amazingly.
Wow.
Come and speak to an expert. I wouldn't come to your country and talk to you about something that I know a little bit about. But
right, and that's what I think that because one of the things when I reached out to you, we were talking about the guidelines that the FAA is trying to, maneuver now with the international repair stations as they pertain to, right now they're not required to do drug testing, even though they have the, what we call the repair station certificate, which is an Alpha 449 certificate, which allows them to do the repairs. But in the U.S. Territories, they have to have a drug program in order to have that certificate. But that's not a requirement for international at the moment. So when that begins to happen, at some point, I'm sure the rulemaking is going to come. So now we would have to connect with someone like you to do those testings for those repair stations in those different countries, right? And there's probably about 80 to 100 repair stations in the UK, right, that are falling under that. Have you heard any rumblings on any of that? And if not, how does that conversation begin to develop? Would that go through like creating a panel or something at IFDAT?
So I'll answer that in two parts.
Yeah.
So in my position and who I network with and keep in touch with, so my days are very long. In the morning, I'm talking to guys in Australia, New Zealand, Asia, and in the evening, I'm talking to guys from, the States on the West Coast there. Yes, we hear of these things. In the UK, there are certain companies that may specialize more in the airline industry, aviation. But the simple thing is, there are a lot of companies that can help. As yet, I'm not aware of any sort of mandatory or anything that's coming through. I'm glad you mentioned IFDAT on that, because our final session, the aviation session, we've got the FAA and we've got Airlines for America, and I think we've also got, just bear with me, I'm just going to look at the program. So just bear with me. We've got somebody from Atlas Air as well doing a talk. So Graham Keithley, who's the Vice President and Associate General Counsel for Airlines of America. We've got a representative from the FAA, and we've got Bridget Kirshner, who's one of the managers from the Drug and Alcohol Program for Atlas Air. That's our final session. In that session, we are going to be touching on these points, I'm sure.
Okay,
and from a conference point of view, that's exactly what we do. We put these topics out, and the events that we do, so IFDAT is in April in Tampa, and everybody's welcome. It's a most amazing networking event, and that session itself, we have a lot of interest in, and we will have people from all over Europe, from Australia, New Zealand. We've got people already booked on to come and talk to people, come and network, come and have a chat. If you're looking for people to do testing outside of the US, this is a conference to come to, because you'll make those contacts, you'll make those networks, you'll be able to speak to what I would consider world leading experts, rather than having to troll through stuff that, you know, Google, let's say, and just picking up somebody that you have no idea who you're dealing with. You know, so yeah.
And it's fine because before we dig into that, what is you just kind of answered all those questions. Like I wanted to ask, like, why should people attend the IFDAT, but you kind of answered that.
Well, we can talk about that. I mean, you know, just coming back to one of the things you were saying is logistically, if we wind ourselves back by 20 years,
right,
our industry was very insular. So America was America, and you did what you did. Europe was Europe. We do what we did. Australia. But now the world is a much smaller place, and we discuss everybody's standards. So if that is the only organization that I'm aware of that brings all the, what I would call localized, whether that be via country, organizations together. So we bring Endasia, SAPA, EWDTS, you name it. We bring people together and help network and help be able to spread networks, so that if people do want specific testing, they can reach out to somebody that they've met, that they've seen talking, that they've seen presenting, or just having a chat over a coffee, you know, and a croissant in the morning, just being able to make those connections. If we'd have wound the clock back 20 years, you would have found that really difficult.
Yeah.
We all did. And that's one of the reasons why IFDAT was formed. And it was formed by Per Bjorkloff, and a couple of colleagues, Kurt, who's still with us, and Sue, and we've lost a couple along the way, unfortunately, very sadly. But those guys sat in a room and went, how do we bring EWDTS and Dacia at the time, and, you know, other together and have best practice? Right. And that's how it was formed. And it's the only organization and conference that I am aware of that actually physically does that. It's not a conference where you'll get 10,000 people footfall through the door. It's a conference of very high quality, high networking, very focused people at the top of the game who want to come, meet, listen about best practice, listen about the issues of the day. We've got world-class speakers, and we get a very loyal following. People come year on year on year, and we'll do it in you know, United States, Canada, South America, one, and then the next one will be over in sort of Europe. So we interchange the two, and we get people, as I say, we're getting people from Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii. We've got military booked on, we've got airlines booked on, we've, you know, you name it. The people that are booking on right now is amazing, the caliber. You just wouldn't have had that 20 years ago.
How does someone become a member?
We don't have members. So this is the other great thing. We are not a paid for membership. So we're a community, and that's how we look at it. We're a community of paid for membership company organizations. We recognize those memberships. So if you go onto our website, www.ifdat.com, so IFDAT, the International Forum for Drug and Alcohol Testing.com, you can book on, and if you're a member of some of the organizations that support us, you get a discount off the delegate price, and you know, and it's as easy as that. We looked at membership because everything we do is supported by our sponsors and our delegates. We put on an amazing conference year on year. Believe me, it's hard work, Greg.
Yeah.
But we get through it because we have some amazing sponsors, and we have some amazing speakers, and we have some amazing delegates, and people put the effort in. You know, and those sponsors and the delegates that come, it supports us. We're a non-profit organization. We're not there to make money. We're there to bring people together. So we've looked at it in the past and gone, should we have membership? Should we not? And the answer is no, because we're bringing together organizations that have memberships.
Right.
Me personally, if I was paying a membership, I would want something throughout the year. I would want to see value. I would want to be able to call upon experts. I would want to get something for a membership. And if that we meet once a year, we're available, but we're a networking, best guidelines, best practice, you know, that it's outside of membership. So you don't have to pay. All you need to do is come along, book on, and there's a delegate price.
I'm going to try to make it this year.
Yeah, I think it's great value for money.
So a couple of things before we move off. I wanted to talk, because I had a question about international marijuana use.
Okay.
Of course, there's an ongoing, divide here in the U.S. between state and federal, requirements and laws. And of course, our focus is on safety sensitive individuals, where they're pilots, drivers, et cetera. How is that converting over to the UK and internationally with marijuana use, and is there difficulties over there with it?
So if we talk about the UK first, marijuana, cannabis, it's still a classified drug. Okay, so it's still illegal. So it's not been decriminalized. It's not been, legalized. It's still a criminal offense, although it's seen as a lower criminal offense, and you might get warnings and this, that, and the other. But if we talk about it in the workplace, it's still on every drug panel that we test for, because from a safety critical point of view, it's not about what's legal and what's illegal. It's about what's safe. So I'm a big advocate of the fact that, having seen both sides of the coin, alcohol is a destructive drug. It's legal, and we still test for it. You look at cannabis, it has pros and cons, and we know as a medicinal substance, it has massive impact. So does ecstasy. When you look at it and you look at the studies of PTSD, you look at psychotropics, you look at how they can be used. But from a safety critical point of view, which is what we're in, we're here to try and reduce risk, make sure that people are safe. Everybody has a right to go to work and come home safely. It's a substance that still impairs. Now, that's the problem. Can we show impairment, or can we show under the influence?
Right.
Urine testing, as we all know, if you're a chronic cannabis smoker, it can remain detectable in your urine system for a long time. And having smoked cannabis, I can tell you 5-6 weeks later, I am certainly not impaired through having a joint.
Right.
Yeah. So I welcome the move over to oral fluid. I welcome the looking at different windows of detection and using the right type of drug testing for the right situation. What do I mean by that? Well, am I looking for what's in your system now, or am I looking for what could have been in your system in the last 14, 28 days? And it all depends on what job role you've got. Do I want our military running around with explosives, guns and everything else, or our armed police, and all we've ever done is test them for the last 24 hours of drug use? Unless we're testing them every day, it's just a snapshot. So the only way to do that is to do something with a longer window of detection. Cannabis is a hard one, isn't it? Yeah. And we've got some fantastic speakers talking about cannabis and the legalization and the issues. We've got people from Canada coming down here with cannabis experts. We've got the Royal Canadian Mounted Police who are attending. We've got some
Patrice Kelly.
So Patrice Kelly is actually our keynote speaker. She very kindly said yes. So I'm really looking forward to hearing Patrice. But we've got Dr. David Kuntz, Bill Corrant, specifically talking about cannabis as well. It's a difficult one. When we look at the US, we struggle to understand why marijuana has been taken off the drug testing panels and the reasoning behind that, because to us, if you're testing for alcohol, why wouldn't you test for cannabis?
Well, it's still on the federal. It's still on federal.
And this is where your expertise far outweighs my expertise.
It's still on federal. It's state that is the states, like New York, DC, the individual states are the ones who say, yeah, we're okay with it, but the federal across the board is like, no.
Yeah. And then, so if we cross this back to one of the questions you asked earlier, you look at a global business,
right?
Okay, that does testing for their drivers and their warehouse workers and stuff in the States. They have one panel in the States, yet in the UK, they've still got cannabis. And then they start saying, well, we're not testing it for in the US, so we're going to stop testing for it in the UK. And it's like, why would you do that? Cannabis is the most prevalent illegally used drug that we find in the workplace, closely followed by cocaine. We don't have the same level of prescription addiction or opioid crisis that you guys have in the States. Not to say that we don't have one, but it's nowhere near the same sort of level as you guys. But prescription medication, over-the-counter medication, counterfeit prescription medication, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. So, the testing for cannabis, I can't see cannabis being legalized in the UK for a long time. Medicinal cannabis, absolutely, it's there. It should be there. Do I want somebody using medicinal cannabis and driving a crane or operating a train or an airplane? Probably not. But it has its place in society. Drugs have their places in society. It's how we apply that to the workforce and people's job roles. If we moved into Europe, very different again. So you've got places like Portugal, where Jose's from, president of EWDTS, who have very much taken a proactive stance on drugs and decriminalize and allow open drug use. You go to places like Amsterdam, where you can, it's drug tourism. A bit like when Canada, allowed cannabis, the States weren't. Everybody was going across the border into Canada for the weekend for a few cheeky smokes. So, Amsterdam is used for that. Amsterdam tried to bring in legal requirements that you had to be a resident of the city or a certain nationality. It hasn't stopped it. We're never going to stop drugs and alcohol misuse, in my personal opinion. Right. What we've got to do is we've got to work with it, we've got to understand it, and we've got to mitigate the risks and find the best ways of mitigating those while protecting the rights of the employer and of the employees. And that's what our role in this industry should be, Greg.
So let me ask you this. When you have U.S. citizens that would come over, have you seen where they've got caught using, over there? Like, what is the risk that a U.S. individual take by using drugs over there and get caught?
In the workplace or legally? Workplace.
Okay.
So,
because now they're over there, right?
Yeah. So in the workplace, it's very much a disciplinary matter. So it would be very similar to what would happen in the States. You know, they would face a disciplinary process, whether the company offered some form of support, treatment, rehabilitation. We're seeing a lot of companies now saying, look, you know, we'll help you. I'm not entirely sure what it's like in the States right now, but it's a job seekers market in the UK.
Right.
So go back 10 years as an employer, you could pick and choose who you wanted. You could, you know, there was plenty of people out there and you could pay them what you wanted to pay them. And there was more of them wanting the job than there were jobs. The employees market now is way stronger. You know, you've got to sell yourself as a business. What are the values? You know, why do they want to come and work for you? So retention of staff is really important. And we're starting to see more and more companies going, you know, how do we get people to come forward and say they've got a problem? We don't want to use them. We don't want risks. We don't want accidents, but we also don't want to lose our staff. So it will very much depend on their employer. It's just a disciplinary matter. Now, if they've broken the law, very different matter. So if it was airline and they were airside, then it's a matter for the police. So it's a law enforcement that would carry on with some testing there. Very much a different matter. But in the standard workplace, you may get disciplined. You know, we have a lot of oil and gas in the UK, specifically up in Scotland. So we have a lot of American companies that operate in that sort of part of the UK. And, you know, their company standards are often applied. But, you know, if you then went into the Arab states where you've got an American company that's employing British, American, whatever, in an Arab state country with Arab state laws, you might find it's a very different picture. You know, I've heard stories of how true they are. You know, if you fail a drug and alcohol test in some of those countries, you end up in prison. It's not a case of you get disciplined and sacked, you end up in prison.
Right.
You know, you've got to know these things. Coming back to what you were saying, why would you connect with somebody in country? That's why you connect with somebody in country. Yeah.
You have to know those rules, right? Because just to be clear for those who are traveling and listening, it's no different than if you go from a state who does not legalize marijuana to a state that does legalize marijuana, and you come back to that state that is non, and you test it's going to stay the same. Just so if you go over to Amsterdam or one of these other places and you come back to the US after using drugs over there and you get tested under your company's program or DOT program and you test positive, that is not an exemption from that positive. It's going to remain.
Absolutely. People say it to us all the time. I was at a stag do, you know, so what do you call that in the States? Where is it, a bucks party, or you know, where you before you get married you go out with all your friends?
Oh, bachelor.
Okay, yeah, bachelor party. So you know, they'll have bachelor parties. They'll go out to Amsterdam. They'll do stuff they shouldn't be doing. They, you know, people who never touched drugs before, all of a sudden they go, do you know what? I'm going to have some cannabis and this, that, and the other. And then they come back and they'll get tested. And it's like, yeah, but it's legal in Amsterdam. But it's understanding it's not about where you took it.
Yeah.
It's about the fact it's still in your system.
It's in your system.
And, you know, if it's in your system, that's your responsibility. So you need to know the policy in which you're being tested for. You've just mentioned something that's fantastic, and I can associate that simply in the UK. And the UK is a tiny group of small countries when you compare it to one of your states. You know, you could put the UK into Texas, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 times. But if you, we have a drink drive limit in the UK, but we have 2 separate drink drive limits. So in England and Wales, it's at 35. So you blow into breathalyzer and they give a reading of 35 or 0.35. But if you go into Scotland, it's 22 or 0.22. So you can literally drive through a soft border. You know, nobody stops you. You don't have to have a passport, or there's no border control. It's just simply you driving up the road and you go past a sign that says, "Welcome to Scotland." And you can be under the drink drive limit in England and be over the drink drive level in Scotland. You can lose your driver's license. You know, you can end up with a fine. Now, when we're talking about employment and workplace, where we have companies that operate in England and Scotland, we have to apply that, and we have to educate the staff for them to know that. So again, coming back to what you were saying about having an expert in country, it's those little nuances which you would probably never know. But it's exactly the same as if you go to Australia and New Zealand, and they have different levels depending on how long you've had your license for and how old are you. And, you know, it's like when we come to the States, you know, and you find out that you've got to be 21 to drink. And it's like, what? You know, I was going into a pub at the age of 15 and getting served.
Wow.
There was no having to show ID. There was, you know, it wasn't legal. It's 18 supposedly in the UK. But, you know, when we go over with our friends, families, and, you know, and they've got kids that are 18, 19, it's saying to them, you know, they've got in their head, oh, yeah, we'll just go to the bars, we'll do this, we'll do that, because that's what you do in Europe. No, you won't be getting any drink. So it's,
or you get in trouble.
Yeah, it's understanding those nuances, you know, and every country's different. And I also liked what you said about traveling. So this is one of the things we like to educate people. It's not about just the workplace, but it's about legal side of things. So I could be prescribed something by a doctor in a different country. Then I come back to this country where I'm working and I'm taking it, and actually it's against the drug testing program that you're working under. So, but for you, you're saying, well, it's been prescribed to me by a doctor in a different country. But you've got to understand that that's not acceptable where you're working.
Right.
And also with the traveling side of things, if I'm prescribed an opiate, for instance, and then I travel into sort of some of the Arab countries, and I'm now importing Class A drugs, it's not looked at very, very, very well.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be important, you know, moving forward, because one of the things that I do want to eventually look at, especially with the repair stations with the FAA, is helping coming to countries and linking up with individuals like yourself to say, okay, how can we help develop this policy, you know, this program that mirrors, because eventually they're going to want to mirror the FAA or DOT, you know, like what does that look like, right? What does that look like going to these different countries? Because to prevent the protection of the company and the employees from getting in trouble, you know, trying to stay in compliance with the guidance of the FAA or DOT or whatever the case may be, and the country. Right? Yeah,
and it's not just things like that. It's also cutoff levels that we use. So for opiates in the US, you'd use 2,000 nanograms in urine, whereas we'd use 300. It's a massive difference. There's a difference with cocaine as well. And it may be that you want us to utilize American based point of care testing kits to follow American guidelines. Well, that's very easy to do now. You know, if you can come to a company like us and, you know, if you say, right, we've got this contract with whoever. Okay, well, we'll use the kits that you want us to use. So you might have an existing supplier for all the stuff that's done in the States. It's very easy for us to just now DHL stuff over. We hold a stock of those kits, and those are the ones that we'll test with. So that's where we sort of come in, and we can help you. One of the things I like to say to everybody is, if I can't help you, I probably know somebody that can.
That's what I say. I may not know everything, but I may know somebody that knows something about something. So before we go, what are some of the future locations for IFDAT? Do you have any? Because you guys be going to some awesome places.
Yeah. So we're talking about having the next one in the UK. Because of the prevalence of the drug testing industry in the UK, and because of what we've been talking about, there's a lot of interaction with the airlines and the aviation. So we always try and think the next one ahead. I'd like to do something, in South America, possibly. I'd also like to do something in the sort of Arab communities, because I feel that that's an emerging marketplace. If you look at the construction that's going on in that part of the world, and the amount of people that are going to die because of that, because of not necessarily drugs and alcohol consumption, but drug and alcohol abuse. And you've got so many expats going into work there, and they come in with their own mentality of what we do at home, and it's not acceptable there. That's a massive emerging market. From a purely selfish point of view, I'd love to do it in the Maldives, and you'd be very welcome to join me, Greg.
I'd love to help with that policy.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get that one past the board. But yeah, if I just look back at the last conferences, so we were in Salzburg in 22, we were in Ottawa in 19, Dublin in 18, we were in Clearwater Beach in 17 in Florida, Stavanger in Norway, which was a very boutique conference. There's a very small amount of people that attended. But it was an excellent conference. San Diego, that was one of my personal favorites. I loved San Diego. Got to play golf in Coronado as well, overlooking the your Navy SEALs train there, don't they? Yeah. Belfast 2014, that was probably one of the finest. One of my friends and colleagues, Gary McCutcheon, organized that, and that's where his hometown. Coral Gables in 2013, Rome was fantastic in 2012, Houston in 2011. We go where people are able to get to. That's really important, because 2 or 3 days is, you need to be able to fly in and fly out if you can. One of the things we get with IFDAT is we have a lot of family interaction. So people will come out with their partners, their wives, their husbands, their kids even, and they'll tag it on. So a lot of the guys that come from America come to Europe, and they'll tag the conference on to a longer stay. Yeah. So they'll get to spend a bit more time in Europe. And we always put social stuff on which brings people together. So our conference is on the 16th, 17th, the 17th, 18th, and 19th of April.
In Tampa.
In Tampa. And on the 17th is very much a social day. So in the afternoon, we'll bring together people who have maybe never met, and we'll do some social activities, and everybody's really quiet to begin with because nobody knows anybody. But the people that come every year, they'll be talking to certain people. And at the end of a few hours, everybody's talking to everybody. It's like a beautiful welcome to the family. It's a beautiful feeling. So that's good. And then the conference goes over 2 days. So the scientific, program, the actual conference itself then is on the 18th and 19th. On the 17th, we have a welcome get-together sort of cocktail party, and that'll be on the deck overlooking. So we're at the Tampa Conference Center, so we'll be overlooking the water there. The first day, we will be having so the initial drinks, they're sponsored by Endasia. We've got some drinks sponsored by Sapa, and after second day, then we're all going for, we have a gala dinner, which is always oversubscribed. So it's limited places. So if people are going to come and book on, if you want to come to that, it's the finest place to have fun and network and carry on talking to people you've met during the day. We're going to be in Ybor City, which is very Colombian based. And
Okay.
we've just there's a restaurant there, which is the oldest Colombian restaurant in the state. And they've got a museum building pretty opposite. And they've said that we can have that for us, flamenco dancers, all that type of thing. And then the following day conference, and then we have a farewell drinks, which is sponsored by our very good friends, platinum sponsors who sponsor us every year, which is Omega Labs. You know, great group of people. You will not find another conference like this. It's unique. It is unique.
And it's from all over the world, right? People are just from
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got people traveling who are booked from New Zealand, Australia, Asia, Canada, South America. I'm pretty sure somebody from Hawaiian Airlines has also booked on. We've got military guys booked on. We've got TPAs booked on. We touch a little bit on background screening as well, because in the UK we don't do a lot of that, but in the States it's very much an integral part, the drug and alcohol screening and the background screening. Yeah, you name it. We've probably got somebody from that country, probably bar Russia. Yeah, but yeah.
Bar Russia. Hey, so one thing before we go, what is the relationship with IFDAT and HHS? Have we have any representatives or people coming to speak at HHS? Because I know they have the embassies and, you know, the military does test under HHS guidelines. But what is that relationship like? And if not, what can I do to bridge that gap?
The answer is we don't really have any sort of formal relationship. It's on the fringes. I'd love you to help me build that relationship. You know as well as I do, I'd love you to be in Tampa and actually, you know, meet you and go out for a cold beer. And then chat about stuff like this. This is exactly what the conference is about, is people like yourselves meeting people like me, getting together, coming up with an idea and going, how do we roll this out? How do we take it to, and then we put I suppose working groups, whether you want to call them working groups or committees. So we have a great success story for you is we put together an International Medical Review Officers Committee. So where you have medical review officers wanting to do some in the States and Europe and wherever, you know, the committee got together, they work tirelessly behind the scenes independently. They've got a session and they'll present, you know, how that works. But that's, again, it's all about networking.
Right.
Come along, speak to us. We can do stuff via Teams, but there's nothing better than doing stuff face to face, Greg.
Right. Yeah, well, I will make that happen and connect you with HHS. I deal with SAMHSA and HHS a lot with my drug testing stuff as well. And I will bridge that gap. But
excellent. I look forward to it.
What would you like to leave everybody with?
Come along to IFDAT. Don't be a stranger. Reach out if you want to work outside of the US. If you have interests outside of the US, you know, it's the perfect place to come. Meet people who can help you, help expand your business. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point, I guarantee you'll be looking for somebody outside, and rather than Google and not know who you're working with, It's a great organization, whether I'm there or not. You know, I'm one of many UK suppliers. We are, I would say most of us are at the top of our game here in the UK, and we can connect you with different people from outside. That's from an IFDAT point of view. You know, we'd love to have a few more sponsors, a few more places. Get yourself booked on. If you're going to book on, make sure you book the place at the dinner, because those places just fly out and we're always limited. From an ITS point of view and from a personal point of view, it's been lovely to meet you finally, Greg.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
It's fantastic. We had a good chat before we started, and I could carry on this chat for hours with you. You know, I'm here. If any of your listeners, any of your viewers want to reach out or need some help, independent, whether you do business with me or not, I will help you. It's not one of those things, you know. That's very much, I see my role for IFDAT, but also at ITS. I'm a networker. That's what I do.
All right, and if anybody wants to connect with him, you can reach me, or I can connect you, or he's on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah,
that's where I connect with them. And I do encourage you guys to get out to IFDAT conference. It's a growing thing, and it's just going to grow because the industry is now reaching out more internationally than you can imagine. And especially you major airline individuals, you fly internationally and you deal with this stuff internationally. I do have customers, clients who have people who work over in Australia and who work over there. And what are those rules, you know, as far as your drug testing pool, random pool, and all that stuff goes. So a lot of this stuff will come into play. So I encourage you to become a part of IFDAT and enjoy those.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, we've got Wayne Lemoy from the DOT, and we've got Patrick from the US Coast Guard as well. So, you know, all these guys coming together to talk in one place, I don't think you'll get that anywhere else.
Yeah, and like I said, from internationally, you're the only one. You guys are the only one, right? Internationally, that is on a speaking level, not attendees, but as a whole, as a conference and relationship and networking. And that's why I'm excited about you guys. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was talking to Patrice Kelly, and when I saw that come up, I said, oh, is you going to be speaking there? And she was like, yeah. I said, oh man, I just really want to be there. I know Bridget, formerly of American Airlines, who's now with Atlas.
Yeah, she's talking. Yeah.
Yeah. So Bridget, it's just it's a small world, but it's big. You know, it's a huge world, but it's small. So I really, again, thank you for coming on. And this is probably part one and part two, because the industry just constantly changes. And especially when they finally do go full blown with oral fluid testing, that's going to change the dynamics of a lot of things. So we're going to have to follow from there.
And I've got a lot of things to talk about on that. Let's leave that one for part two.
Yeah, part two. So with nothing else, everybody, I will see you next time with my next awesome interview. So stay tuned and make sure you subscribe, like, comment, so that it can get the algorithm going and that you'll be notified whenever I drop a video like this. So until next time, I will see you guys later.